Hello, my fellow Breck aristocrats. Okay, today we are talking about stress. What is stress and how can we reduce it? Well, stress is that thing that happens to you that can damage your health. So anything that is a threat to your health could theoretically be called a stressor. An example of a stressor would be a viral infection. The virus comes in, it puts pressure on the body. The body then has to respond to that stressor by mounting an immune response. Radiation due to the sun would be another example of a stressor. The body is bombarded by the stress of radiation, oxidative stress, free radicals result from that radiation exposure. Then the body has to mount a response. Hopefully, if a person is consuming adequate amounts of antioxidants, vitamin E, etc., some of those stresses can be reduced, and so we won't see as much damage to the body as we would otherwise. So a stressor is anything that theoretically could damage the body. Then there's emotional stress, and in the past physicians have kind of poo-pooed emotional stress. What can I tell you? America was founded by the British. And so we come from a long history of stiff upper lips. Yes, stiff upper lip. That if somebody had a stressor or if somebody was having an emotional challenge, the culture that we come from would say, well, you just have to have a stiff upper lip and you have to get over it. But as time has gone by and we learn more about science, we learn more about health, we now realize that emotional stress can actually have quite a negative impact on health. So we first want to identify what a stress is. Those things that we are exposed to in life that theoretically can damage our health. So those are some examples of a stressor. And those are some of the ways that our body deals with stress. Talking about if your blood pressure goes up, obviously that's one of the things we monitor for, particularly in somebody who has a lot of stress, because high blood pressure is associated with increased risk for cardiovascular disease and stroke. So that is another reason why we don't want to see people experiencing a lot of stress. Extreme emotional stress actually can cause oxidative stress because inflammation goes up. Emotional stress can actually cause inflammation in the body, and if it's chronic emotional stress, it can lead to chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation can in turn cause hormonal changes in the body, which can be deleterious to our health. An example of that would be an elevation in cortisol. Cortisol is a hormone that's produced in the adrenal glands, and it's a great anti-inflammatory. That's why we often will hear about steroidal anti-inflammatories, steroids. Steroids are a pharmaceutical version of what our body naturally produces with our cortisol. So as inflammation goes up, our body responds to the inflammation by producing high amounts of cortisol. But cortisol has a primitive function in the body that harkens back to the days of famine, when human beings often would go days without food. So this would create emotional stress, right? Just like when you can't pay your bills, you're triggering that same primitive part of your brain, and then the body responds by raising cortisol. So in addition to having inflammation and elevated cortisol, your body does what it normally would do in a famine. It creates insulin resistance. And this is the relationship between cortisol and insulin resistance. And the reason it does that is so that you can conserve glucose. So people would get depressed, they would not want to move, they would conserve their energy, right? Because if you only have a set number of calories and you're in a state of famine, you go into a semi-hibernated state. So that's what happens. We get stressed out, we can't pay our bills, we go into that stress mode, cortisol levels go up. Insulin-resistant diabetes is a risk factor. We become chronically depressed. We don't want to move. We crawl back into our bed. We don't want to look at our life. That is the pattern we see between emotional stress associated with financial problems, elevated cortisol, insulin resistance, and depression. So how do we fix it? Well, if you're a broke aristocrat, you do what's called an account and a reckoning. An account and a reckoning, and that is one of these books. And we always tell people it's the one thing that we broke aristocrats really want you to spend money on. We want you to spend money on an account and a reckoning book, a book that accounts all of your challenges in life and how you're going to resolve them one by one. Every day we give ourselves an account and a reckoning, because we are neo-Victorians, right, ladies and gentlemen? We are neo-Victorians. And this was something that the Victorian lady or the Victorian gentleman would do on a daily basis. They would make account of their actions, and they would make an account and a reckoning. This is what Kipling wrote about, right? Make account of the doubting too, right? This was something that the Victorians did a lot. They were honest with themselves and with God, and then they made an account and a reckoning. So if you are feeling stressed, if you are having a problem, the first thing you can do is make an account and a reckoning. What is going on? What are you stressed about? If you're stressed about finance, then you can't claim it until you name it. And that means writing down all of your debts, taking a serious look at them. Make yourself a nice cup of herbal tea, just like Dr. Whimsy does during tea time, and make an account and a reckoning, and simply claiming our debt, simply taking a look at it, taking a look at first how much debt we have and how much money is coming in, and getting ourselves on a payment plan can dramatically reduce our stress. Other areas of stress can be job performance, or being in a job that doesn't make us happy. Sometimes we have to leave a particular job. It's unfortunate, but either we're not making enough money or we're not getting along with the boss. But we spend a third of our life at our jobs, most Americans. And so for that reason, it can be a source of tremendous stress. So we've talked about this in the past, and I'll talk about it again, and that is that the way out of stress is to first name and claim the stress, and then remove the cause of the stress. So we've got our account and our reckoning, we've named and we've claimed what the source of the stress is, and then one by one we do our best to remove the cause of the stress. It may be looking for a new job, it may be taking a second job if we're trying to pay off debt. What I would say is going to help you on your journey, in addition to naming and claiming it and then taking baby steps to correct the problem, is two things I would ask you to do. Scratch that. 3 things I would ask you to do on your journey to reduce stress. And that is, number 1, I want you to meditate twice a day. I don't care what type of meditation it is. But what scientists are looking at is something called the alpha state. It's that deep state of internal calm where our mind can rest. Now, there has been some research. The leading research has been on transcendental meditation. The reason I mention transcendental meditation is because transcendental meditation has 300 clinical studies. And this is why Walter Reed uses it. Physicians prescribe it, is because it can get people into a de-stressed mode, and we now know that it will drop cortisol by about 40%, and it'll also drop your blood pressure. So meditating twice a day. If you decide to do transcendental meditation, usually it's twice a day, once in the morning, once at night. If you decide to do a prayer-based or a religious form of meditation, I would advise the same thing. We think it's about 20 to 25 minutes a day, where a person would read a spiritual book and abide in spirit. It's called abiding meditation if you're a person of faith. We've talked a little bit about that. The nuns do this, an abiding meditation, where they abide with Christ. They simply sit and allow spirit or God to be present with them. They do it several times a day. But I feel like if a person can meditate twice a day and say, you know what, this is a priority, first thing in the morning and before going to bed, we can dramatically see a reduction in stress. The second thing I would recommend is to get a good night's sleep. I've talked about sleep in the past, and I cannot stress it enough. That means no alcohol and no caffeine several hours prior to bed, and to really guard your sleep. Be also careful about electronic stimuli half an hour to an hour before bed, because it can actually have an impact on the quality of your sleep. Sleep is something vital to health. If you are not taking your sleep seriously, you are putting yourself and your health at risk. Treat your sleep the way you would any other prescription from a physician, and you'll see that your health has been dramatically improved. We want to see 8 to 9 hours of good quality sleep every night. If you are struggling with sleep, do what you can to find solutions. Look at the medications you're taking. If you are taking any drugs or alcohol that could be having an impact on your sleep, caffeine, if you can reduce it, really take your sleep seriously. And finally, to reduce stress, I strongly encourage people to watch your diet. There are actually foods that can cause us to be more stressful. For example, drinking too much alcohol, too much salt, too much sugar, foods that are overly spicy. Those things can cause stress as well. Eating a good, nutritious diet. Don't buy junk or pre-made things that you stick into the microwave. Learn how to cook for yourself. Have it be simple food made from scratch, and that can dramatically improve health and hopefully reduce stress. So this was a little longer than I had wanted, but this was a video on what is stress and a few simple tips about things that you can do to dramatically reduce your stress. Understand that until we can reduce stress, it's going to be very, very hard. In fact, it's going to be impossible to be truly happy and healthy. Reducing stress is a cornerstone to living a healthy life. All right, I want to thank you for watching this video of Broke Aristocrats. Be sure and share, like, subscribe, and tell me what you are doing to take care of yourself without breaking the bank. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.